Now we have the MOHO panel, the Modern Heritage Observatory. The panel will be moderated by Mr. Akram Reyes, who will also be giving the first presentation. Akram Reyes is the co-founder of the Foundation of Arab Music Archiving and Research, AMAR, and a member of its management board. Akram is a researcher in ethnomusicology and a management consultant with interest in post-conflict reconstruction, heritage music, theater of the Levant, and archives. He has completed a master's degree in public policy and international affairs at the American University in Beirut in 2021. In 2006, Akram organized an interdisciplinary conference on the joint works of Fayrouz and Ziad Rahbani, and he later edited and published a dossier on Ziad in the Adab magazine in 2009-2010. In 2014, he co-edited and published through AUB Press an edited volume titled Selected Papers of Zaki Nassif. Mr. Reyes, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Welcome to this panel. We are essentially non-librarians, and we're coming to the topic of libraries from the point of view or from the standpoint of cultural heritage. So Modern Heritage Observatory was an initiative that took place between the years 2012 and 2013 and was funded by Henry Ishbal and the EU. It had several objectives. One of these objectives was capacity building through training, through events, conferences, and workshops. The other is through advocacy work and awareness raising, and through sharing and pooling of resources and experiences among members of the network. So since the funding ended in 2012, the network has been able to continue to a minimal extent its activities. We have been trying to celebrate International Archives Day and organize different activities throughout those years. Today, we are happy to be part of this conference and to present the experiences of some of the members of this network. So the first presentation will not be mine. It will be Rana's presentation from the Arab Image Foundation. And to introduce Rana, she has worked in arts administration and cultural management in both galleries and nonprofit organizations. Since March 2003, she has been serving as a director of the Arab Image Foundation. Before that, she has been the director of the Sphere Zemler Gallery in Beirut and took part in producing group and solo shows. Most recently, she was the administrative director of the Beirut's Arts Center. So we welcome Rana and thank you.
Thank you, Akram. And thank you to all the organizers and all the panelists for this very insightful conference so far. There's a presentation of mine. There we go. Okay. So just to give you some background about the Arab Image Foundation, it was established in 1997 by a group of 3 artists and photographers with the intention to collect, preserve, and rethink photographs and photographic practices from the Swana region and its diaspora. The foundation explores the multiple intersections between archival practices and research and aims to forge new pathways for photographs and photographic collections by confronting and questioning the social and political and economic realities of our time. So since then, the foundation has expanded to include a multitude of researchers, archivists, historians, architects, and scholars, and has been entrusted with over 500,000 photographic objects in its collections. So today I'm going to be speaking about how we are as AIF, how we're operating and existing as an archive, both physically and in physical and in digital spaces. So most notably this year, the Arab Image Foundation moved to a new space. We are previously in a small apartment in Jamaizi on the 4th floor, very much sealed from the public. So the intention was that we're going to look for a new space, have it a bit more public facing, have a bit more space for us to actually work within the archiving process together, and have more public spaces for gathering. This was an intention that we've had for years, but of course, with the port explosion and us being located in Jamaizi, this definitely propelled us even further to find a space quickly. So this is the unfortunate, these are unfortunate pictures as a result of the explosion. So earlier in October, we moved to our new space. So there's a before and after for our, let me go back, for our cold storage room, which now has expanded to take on more collections in the new space in Kantari. So this new space, like I said, it allows for more room for the collection to expand, but also allows for our different labs, whether in digitization or in preservation, to coexist together. And that sort of reflects the more holistic approach that we have towards archiving and the archival process. The new space also solidifies multiple collaborations that we already have, including with MOHO, that has multiple public spaces. It sort of blurs the line between the private sort of operations of an archive and the public and its interaction with the public. So the way we are looking into these partnerships is that it's not just a one-time sort of sharing of resources, which I think is a practice that we already have established, or a one-time event, but more symbiotic, long-lasting relationships and partnerships, because it's very clear. I mean, we could have nice spaces and they could all look nice, but I feel like the real challenge is keeping the lights on, training staff, retaining staff, and that is the real challenge. And I think no one really wants to fight this on their own. So we're looking at these partnerships in ways that not only do we pool funding and raise funds together, but we also collectively program, as well as collectively administer the different operations of our activities. So one of these public-private spaces, I guess, is our library, which I could give an example of a collaboration that we currently have with Dawawin, which is an art space that unfortunately had to close down in 2018 because of financial pressures and the financial burdens of having an art space with little funding. So they joined our library. Now it's sort of a multitude of libraries. So we have the Library of Dawawin and the Library of Public Works Studio, who also lost their space, which was in Mansion, an unfortunate place that also was, a space that was lost. So now our library has our own collection, Dawawin's and Public Works, and it offers a more specialized library when it comes to image and moving image, as well as architecture and design. This collaboration also would expand into programming. It doesn't show yet, but we are currently building a screening room and an auditorium, which would allow for these collaborations to manifest in different public events. So like I said, this primary sort of attractive thing that we had for the space is that it would be accessible to the public. So over here we have street view, and you could see at the top of the picture that there's a skylight that you could see inside the library, as well as see inside the different archiving labs. The intention is, even though we are sticking to the standards of archiving, but we're also unsealing it to a certain extent, unsealing the public to the public, which actually unsealing the archival process to the public, which is usually often behind closed doors. So we're opening the space to these interactions, but also the reality is that in this country, it's also difficult to access books that aren't sort of commonly available in different libraries, but also it's just a place with air conditioning, internet, cup of coffee that is often free. So it's a space that people could work, have fast internet without having the financial burdens that you often find in coffee shops or having to pay a tuition to access libraries and universities. So that's when it comes to our space and sort of giving space to different people rather than having these more individual ways of working. And this is one of the many phases that the foundation has gone through. In its relatively short history, it has had many lives. And it has responded to different urgencies at different times. So having been established slightly after the war and seeing that there was a lack of archives or archives in very precarious situations in Lebanon and the region, it responded to that urgency and began to collect and to preserve multiple collections. And in fact, so in the first 6 years of the foundation's inception, it commissioned various research missions to the Arab world as well as its diaspora. These are collections, for example, from Palestine, from Morocco, Egypt, Iran, Mexico, Argentina. And in fact, almost 2/3 of this 500,000 collection was collected, preserved, and cataloged within the first 6 years of the foundation. So this was really in response to this urgency that there aren't photographic archives, and there was a need to preserve this. And in this fervor, the collections were also digitized, but more as a testament to the preservation process rather than sort of having the prospect for research and further examination. But when digital photography became more available and faster, there was another urgency to digitize. It was as much as possible, as quick as possible, and to get it out online on different platforms and to have it available to the public. All of this is in response to an urgency, and we just realized that we can't continuously respond to an urgency. We're always in a state of heightened emergency in this country. And oftentimes when that happens, things fall through the cracks. The team's morale often suffers because, as everybody knows, archiving work never ends. So it becomes often very overwhelming. And in terms, even though we constantly maintain these high standards of care, but the sterility of the process created a distance between the people assigned to care for the collections and the collections themselves. The focus was more on output rather than on the process itself. So this is now the new phase of AIF, where we really are slowing things down in terms of collecting and expanding and elongating timelines for archiving and digitization. This offers just more space for care, learning, research, and sharing and exchange. So I'm gonna be discussing 2 projects. Are we okay on time? To illustrate how we're slowing down our workflows and how that in turn allows us to expand our work on photographic objects rather than actually cutting down on activity. So this first project, that we're currently working on is from the Photojacq collection. Photojacq is a photo studio in Tripoli from, I would say, the late 40s up until the 70s. This collection that we have, we previously digitized, cataloged and digitized 45,000 negatives that were stored in film canisters. And now this new phase of the project is these hand-bound albums by the photographer's studio that also formed as the photographer's own archive. As you could see, there are different tags on these albums signifying the references that they used in the studio. So we're using this up where there are 98 albums and we estimate over 13,000 negatives. So we are taking our time with this. We are looking at the paper. We're examining the photographer's own archival process and incorporating that in our own referencing system. We're also using this as a learning opportunity. So we've been in regular contact with preservation fellows at the Met Museum who specialize in photo albums. And the way that we're working, it's not just the preservation or the archivists at AIF who learn about this, but rather someone in administration or someone in research who learns how to handle the object, learns about the paper, because that all feeds into the overall process. We'll also be having a workshop in the upcoming Archives Week that is organized by my colleagues as well. About how to take care of these things. So this is not just preservation, cataloging, stabilizing the object, and then digitizing it as soon as possible, but rather a learning opportunity, something that we could incorporate, modify our own systems based on the collections that we get. Another project that we've been working on, sorry, these are some more images of this. This is the stabilization process. These are, I mean, the whole new approach had, I mean, everybody is describing how people are excited and like they give it everything from the heart of when it comes to archiving. But these are just every time the archivist stabilizes a cover of the albums, she immediately sends them to me on WhatsApp, because there's an excitement to something that they're learning and sort of developing within their position. So the other project that we have is digital spaces on the topic that has dominated the conference on digitization. So there are multiple lives that the foundation has also gone through digitally. At one point, things were only on site, and then the technology changed and things were on tablets and on different screens. And then, of course, things went online. In the end, we have returned back to some basics. Currently, our database is a massive Excel sheet that has given us all nightmares. But it's because we're rebuilding something. We realize that we've become restricted and sometimes at the mercy of the tools and the platforms that we have, and which are in fact meant to adapt to our needs rather than the other way around. So now we've incorporated, whether through our board or through staff, coders and programmers to develop a database and an online platform in a way that reflects our politics, our workflows, and documents the history and the multiple people who have passed through AIF and left their imprint on the archiving process. So this also has allowed us to expand on the narrative of the image from the metadata that we've collected, basically how it came to be, who it represents, how it came to AIF, and it allows us to draw up different paths and links across collections and creates a bigger picture and places the work in a wider context of the region. So we're all pretty technically challenged at the team, but we're all learning this as well. From a basic code to different metadata schemas, we're really building it, and it's a team collective effort. So we've had multiple workshops with developers and coders, from the basics of hardware to actually how we develop pathways and coding pathways as well. We've also been thinking about the language that we use and the different vocabularies that we have. And we're trying to establish our own vocabulary and own controlled vocabularies for our context, whether it's our geographic context or historical one. So we've also had workshops with diversity, equity, and inclusion consultants on metadata to learn how we could incorporate these values in our metadata collection. And hopefully, this will also develop in Arabic, and unfortunately, there are very few controlled vocabularies in Arabic for referencing and for archiving. So that's the hope that would also encourage multiple language and dialects. The platform is also seeking to create modules for crowdsourced research. This creates a direct interaction with the community and the images, so the images that represent these communities. It also allows communities to regain autonomy over the stories and histories told and to unfold the photograph's agency. So ultimately, what we are looking for is that when we slow down our timelines and give more space, both physically and digitally, it's allowed the foundation to find and explore new systems of care for our teams, the public, and the collections and who they represent.
Thank you, Rana. As Rana mentioned, that most members of MOHO are really independent or private initiatives towards safeguarding different types of cultural heritage that have appeared mostly after the end of the Lebanese war, like apart from Surso, which is like a very established old institution in Lebanon. So the medium that Rana talked about was photography. In my presentation about AMAR, the Foundation for Arab Music Archiving and Research, I will move into the medium related to music. And later on, we'll talk about different media. Of course, each media has its own peculiarities, and this will be our starting point. So I will now move to the podium and start my own presentation. However. So the Foundation for Arab Music Archiving and Research was established in 2009. It's an NGO. It was a result of the intersection between different researchers, experts, and enthusiasts who had this drive for preserving Arab music, art music heritage. Our specialty the scope of our specialty is defined by a time period which starts in 1903, which is actually the date of the start of the technology of recording, of sound recording in our region, until the end of the 30s, which coincides with the date of the Second World War, and with several changes that took place in the music industry in the region. The location of Amar is in the Qurnet al-Hamra village, المطل Antilles. It's managed by a management board and a consulting technical board. So this photo shows the studio of Amar and some of the shellac records, and at the back, one of the two sets for digitization. Our archive, we are mostly concerned with sound recordings, with audio recordings, and to a much lesser extent with paper archives and photographs. The sound recording is also, since we are concerned with the period from 1903 till 1939, it's defined by the dominant technology that was prevalent during that period. The dominant technology was first the cylinders, بيسموه بالعربي كباية, and then mostly the shellac records, which precedes, of course, the vinyls and the reels. This collection was mostly acquired from Egypt, countries of the Levant and the Iraq, and it's considered to be the largest centralized collection for Arabic music in Egypt and the Levant, most specifically for what is called the maqam music, or the art of the Nahda period. And the importance of this collection, that it is the only really, or the main trace that's available for this type of practice. So it's a starting point, not only to be familiar with the artists or with the recordings, but also with the underlying artistic practices that were behind those types of arts, which were marginalized later to the interest of large orchestras and of notated music, and also with the marginalization of improvised music. So the resources are kept in a well-equipped storage place and a small staff, which is qualified and specialized. It's also one of the advantages, it's located outside of Beirut, which is safer and less risky. So the two technologies I talked about, although we are non-librarians, but we are really so much affected by the history of recording technology, of technology as an overall, and recording technology. And as I said, the first recording technology that was available was the wax cylinder, which you can see it in the middle. The machine was invented by Thomas Edison. Really, we use it to a very small extent. It's a very vulnerable media. It's usually consumed by each time that we use it. So that's why we try not to use it a lot, partly, especially only for preservation purposes. The good thing that the largest part of our archive is in shellac records format and not in this very vulnerable format. The second format, as you see in the middle, is the photograph of the phonograph. It's composed of this big cylinder which projects the music. And then you have at the base, the manivelle, because it's a mechanical machine and it's not, it doesn't use electricity. So this is sort of a small phonograph. You can see in households, big phonographs like this high, So it's more like a portable phonograph at the time. And to the right, you can see one of the advertisements for phonographs, which were sold by the company Odeon. And the price was 350 قرش at the time. So here are the shellac records. We have two categories. We have the international companies which came into the region, not because of their concern to preserve this type of music, but rather for commercial purposes. They were seeking profits, and they saw that this region is a very, very vast market for attaining lots of profits. So you can see like the labels of Columbia, Polyphone, Odeon, and others. Whereas to the left are the only three local or regional record companies. In Lebanon, we had the Baidaphone company, which was established by the Baida brothers. And in Syria, there's the Sodwa company. And also in Egypt, there was the Mishiyan company, which was established by an Armenian family, Mishiyan. So it was interesting that at that early stage of the import of this type of technologies, we had local or regional initiatives that were interested in acquiring and managing those type of technologies to their own pursuits. What are the risks and the challenges that we face? Many of the risks are associated with a type of media. So as we mentioned, for example, the wax cylinder is very volatile. Less risky, of course, is the shellac records when properly maintained. There are external risks pertaining to the situation of Lebanon, which is usually undergoing one crisis after the other. Most recently, as we all know, we had problems in electricity supply. We had to get our own generator to have like an ongoing power supply to maintain ventilation and the daily operations. Also, our bank account, like many others in Lebanon, has been, frozen. So most of our assets now are, we cannot use them. Other challenges are access to funds, acquiring new technologies, because really this is a very vibrant field of technology in terms of new softwares for digitization or other tools. Also, in terms of institutional capacity building and adapting to new standards, whether standards by the British Library or other international standards. Okay. In terms of digitization, at Amar, we have two units for digitization. We use also very special phonographs because there are different generations of phonographs, and each generation has its own specs and its own needles, to capture the sound from the record systems. And in terms of the digitization process, we use international protocols by IASA or by the British Council, British Library, I mean. As for the backup copies, we retain one copy at the premises of Amar and two other copies, one outside Lebanon and the other in a bank. I'm trying to go very quickly. So apart from acquisitions and digitization, we really put a lot of effort on dissemination. And we try to make it as accessible as possible through different ways and to different target audiences. One of the main products is that this CD set that you see. Of it as a sample here. It has 4 CD sets, and a documented trilingual booklet that gives the context, the analysis of the music. And we try to, such a release usually takes like 1 year to produce, and we make them available for sale. And this is one of our main incomes. So apart from this, we have scholarly publications, and we have like an online podcast. Also, we support researchers and access to like scholarly inquiries through an request form, which regulates this process. Also, in terms of dissemination, we have tried to participate in international venues. We have been part of 2 exhibitions, one in Germany in the Humboldt Museum, and the other in France in the Museum. So we see in the photo, this is one of the installations. It's a 360 degrees installation that will give a live simulation of the experience of some endangered oral traditions in Kuwait or in Algeria or in Egypt. And we think this is a very important way of dissemination because many exhibitions, unfortunately, have either an Orientalist approach or a sensational approach rather than a research-based approach that starts from a rigorous perspective on how to perceive this heritage and how to break this ice with this heritage and bring it to a wider audience. Also, in terms of dissemination, we organize public listening sessions, and you can see in the photo above, this one of the listening sessions that was taking place at the premises of Amar. Below is the announcement of a public listening session that we held in collaboration with the Museum. We try also to reach to different audiences. We are now very much interested in reaching out to schools and to school students to teach, to orient them about this legacy and about the merits of digital preservation. One venue of dissemination also is our website and our Facebook page and Instagram account. These are really our accounts. We try to publish lots of materials through these venues and channels. Particularly our websites, our Facebook pages are like a meeting point for enthusiasts from the Arab region and also internationally. We have many members throughout the world. This page, this screenshot is from our website. It is a podcast that had around 200 episodes. It's a bilingual podcast, and we try to highlight through an educational approach the aspects of this legacy, whether through composers, singers, musical forms, practices, or even teaching of this music. So I encourage you to visit our website, amar-foundation.org, and maybe try to listen to those podcasts, which are transcribed both in Arabic and English, and which include original recordings from our own archive. Finally, as a member of MOHO, we have been active with MOHO since 2014. Through International Archives Day, we conduct open houses. We have also joined the MOHO in giving panels at AUB or even in coordinating the network. And soon in the first week of June, we are also this year organizing with our good colleagues an International Archives Week that will have a film screening at Surso, that will have also open houses held by the different members, as well as a training session held by the Arab Image Foundation. So this is really a very brief overview, and I hope this will be an invitation for you to visit our premises, to think of ways of collaborating together, and to try to join forces in trying to preserve and disseminate this heritage. Thank you. Now back to the second role of a coordinator. I have the pleasure to introduce my colleague. My colleague from Sirsa Museum, Ms. Rowena Abu Harb, Head of Archives. Rowena specialized in photography and musicology at the UZEK University. She was previously the archivist and the media officer at Hib Al-Khawas International, as well as the library manager at Espace ST. At the Sirsa Museum, Rowena provides research assistance and access to archival materials to the public and is responsible for the digitization of the museum's archives. So Rowena's presentation will be in two parts. The first is a PowerPoint. It will be followed also by a short film about archives.
Thank you. For those of you who don't know the Sirsa Museum, Sirsa Museum was established in 1961. It was a house, and it was lended by the owner of the house to the public, Lebanese public, on one condition to make a modern and contemporary art museum, right? The work on the archives has begun, actually, the idea of having a library in the museum had begun in 1969. And then in 2015, there has been a special space for the archives and the library on -1 when we extended the building, because it was only the 2 floors that you see now in this rendition. But then we went 6 floors underground where we host a art restoration workshop with very well equipped gear specialized for this. We have a digitizing room also on -4. The library occupies a good space in -1. I will start showing you, actually, to link it with Akram. These are the exhibitions we've had, especially for MOHO. Back in 2016, this is one of the exhibitions. You can see the phonograph that Akram had the courtesy to give us all the way to Sirsu. We have photographs from the Fouad Debas collection that is hosted actually in the Sirsu Museum. Also, we could see it on the tables. AUB were also with us. ACA with the George Harubid, who's here with us, the Arab Center for Architecture. You can see the posters of very old selected maps and how do you call them, blueprints from projects. Etc. That's another photo also, so you could see the Amar cylinders that we spoke about right now. Donc, I'm starting just from outside and I'm getting into the depths of the Sirsu Museum. We're also seeing generic photos of exhibitions that were done after a donation of archives from a gallery or an institution. The goal is always to put it accessible for the public. On the left side, we have slides coming from the archives of the gallery of Richard Shahin. And then on the right side, it was Épreuve d'artiste Amal Trabulsi, also some displayed archive. But this all came after a long process of acquisition, organization, digitizing, and then it comes here. Very quickly, the library and archives in the museum. So in terms of visitors, on a just a 6 months period, and then after also the reopening of the museum, because the museum was affected heavily by the Beirut explosion. So we opened only a year ago, almost just a year ago, on the 23rd of May. 6 months, 4,181 visitors, of which around 1,230 users. These people come either read or do the personal work. But there's also, I'm going to pass around the passing by people, per month, mainly we have an average of 10 researchers. These researchers come from different countries, from different universities. We have PhD students. We have students who are like just preparing their BA project, etc. And then again, we have on the other side, we can see small stats about donations. So the donations come in two different shapes. They are either donations donated to the museum to be part of their properties, or then deposits. And these donations come from libraries, come from institutions, they come from stakeholders of artists, or they come from the artists, even if they are still alive. They give us their archives. They can also donate artworks to take part of the collection. The deposit archives are usually, and there's a contract as we spoke earlier, about how to accept the archives, in which strategy also it has to collide with what we have in terms of archives. It has to be a key, a chain to complete the whole chains of archives. So if we get archives from Amar Foundation, for example, if it's not colliding with what we have in terms of modern and contemporary art and the artists that we have, we don't take it. We leave it to another network so it can collide with another entity to make a whole history. All right, so at the Sirso Museum, through donations and deposits, actually, I was going to say that deposits are digitized and given back to the people who deposited it. For example, we had the family of a painter called Sisi Sirso. They gave us the archives as deposit. We digitized this archives and we gave them a digital copy with returning the physical copy, but now we had signed a contract that this is accessible for all researchers. So in terms of digital material, everything is agreed upon that needs to be accessible, and as the private ones, they will stay private and they will not be accessible, but they will be digitized as conservation, as we spoke before. So in VRAC, if I can say, 40,000 documents between photography, etc., and the archives are in the hold of the Sirso Museum right now, but we're still having more donations, and we're focusing more on the art galleries in order to try to write the history of art galleries from the beginning, let's say, when we started speaking about modern art, let's say in the early 1930s, till nowadays. Okay, strong point, as I said before, I mentioned it. The library, this is the library. You're seeing also on the bottom right of the screen, the system of archiving the artist folders. You see upright also displays, because we promise the donors or the depositors that we will put this accessible to people, and then we initiate people to go fetch deeper when there's a research. Also, digitizing could be a reason. Actually, it's funded mainly. We try to fund the digitizing campaigns so we can have every kind of resources for the personnel who are working, because this is a whole full-time job. Personally, from 2015 till now, I was the only person on the Department of Library and Digitizing. And because I studied photography, I put my skills of digitizing. But then again, this is not a rule. There should be a lot of people hired in this field, mainly technicians who know more photography and lighting, so we could be as fidel, as faithful as we can to the object that we are digitizing. Sometimes we digitize just before a few exhibitions that we're doing, because the documents also will be at risk, exposed, displayed. If the item was not digitized, we digitize it to conserve it just in case there was an accident. As you see on the right side, we tried to digitize what was going to the Berlin Biennale, the Venice as well, and then in Qatar as well, these pieces of archives traveled. And then this is part on the left side, this is part of the exhibition that I invite you all to go see. It's a timeline of the Sirso Museum in parallel with the political and social events that were happening, and all the ruptures that were in the life of Sirso Museum and some artists because of the war and the social events. So this is where we also digitized before. Okay, you can see here we have photographic material, we have audio material, we have plaque de verre, which is all, we have etchings. These are mediums that are very complicated to digitize, and we need to be very careful. And we also need the intervention of professionals, and this is what we're trying to get funds for. We're getting people who can tell us what kind of material to use, what kind of gear to use to digitize at least what you're seeing in front of you, which is very, very fragile material. Then we have also press cuts. From 1961, the museum has gathered all the press cuts directly related to all the artistic events happening in Sirsu, but also in the region. In the 80s, because we had the Civil War, we started focusing more on artist folders. So now we have a really big collection of artist folders coming from Sirsu Museum, from different galleries as well, who exhibited these artists. As methods, there's two methods we use, and luckily before the crisis, we had money enough to buy a very good scanner with its software. But then again, we have the copy stand, as most of you have. In Kaslik, there's a lot of it as well in Uzek. We're planning to buy a book scanner, but we're also writing for fundings for this, because we have manuscripts, and we have also what you saw in terms of newspapers. As you see, there's Al Anwar, etc. This is an agency usually who used to combine all these. The name of this agency is Monitor. And then they are like dépliant folios. But what we have, and what is challenging, and what we cannot digitize under these two methods, are the very big manuscripts and binders of newspapers like La Revue du Liban. They have done binders for all their issues. From the first issue till the last printed issue in 2000, we have a really big bunch that we need to digitize. When we digitize this and we put the system of OCR that reads the PDF, the whole year, or the whole year of magazines that were issued in 1 year, let's say, you could search by name in these. We could search by name in these. So this is what we're trying to do. Now, challenges are getting fundings for professional people who could do the digitizing in the right way. We're also looking for partners. If another institution would like to digitize, maybe we could write both to a funder. And then we're trying to get the right softwares, the right platform to get our database up on it, so it would be published. But now you can access the Sirsu Museum publications through the website. You know what kinds of books we have. But then again, the archives will be soon published online. Not all of them, but you could read titles of the archives. And then for deeper researches, there's a way, a form to fill, and you could come to the Sirsu Museum and do it in the library. I called this last slide Rescue 101. It's the Beirut explosion. During the Beirut explosion, none of us would have expected that we were like 800 meters, a straight line on the hill above the port. So the whole wave came to us and to many other institutions around us. What happened is that the gypsum board and everything around us, 0 doors, 0 windows, they were all on the ground. The collection was all full of white powder coming from the ceiling. And then the powder entered inside the archives, inside the books, inside the photography boxes. But we have some sealed rooms where nothing happened except doors and dust. What we intuitively have done, and someone has spoken about the women power, before even asking anyone, intuitively, the next day on the 5th of August, we started documenting everything around us with a GoPro hung here on my chest and photography, and another person just writing down notes about the artwork that has been, let's say, badly damaged, or it's an assessment that was so primitive, but then we learned that we're doing the right thing. We have done the right thing. One thing to mention, the army came after a few days, but they were really efficient, and Biladi as well. These are the people who showed us that, let's say, if you have pieces of an artwork from ceramics full and covered with white dust, you have to like pay attention to this. This is not a debris. This could be the last piece in the restoration, perfect restoration of an object. So these people are very important, and we really need to communicate more with them and have more workshops so we can rescue the artwork. There has been a very big dusting campaign on all the objects and the library and the archives. Finally, I will invite you for the 18th of May to International Museums Day at the Sirso Museum at the library. We're having a small display, selected exhibitions and archives and publications from the Sirso Museum focused on archives, I mean archival-based exhibition. And then on the 7th of July, on the film screening that we will have for the International Archives Day with our colleagues in MOHO. Thank you so much.
Now we'll see the film of abandoned dwellings. If you
Yes. For the moment, we're gonna watch a movie that has been actually part of an exhibition installation done in the Sirso Museum by Gregory Bouchakian and Bouchakjian, sorry. The curator was the director of our museum right now, Karina Al-Halo. It is based on archival practices. It's called Abandoned Dwellings. Gregory has done a whole study and a thesis on the abandoned dwellings and mansions in Beirut mainly. And what came out of it was something also at the same time an artistic practice with photography exhibition, and this film came out of it. But we need to put the lights dimmer.
أخي، أنا في فكرة الرجوع إلى الوطن، ولكن خايف من الحوادث اللي بين العرب واليهود وبلادهم.
Quand j'étais petite, j'adorais ce jeu qui consistait à introduire ce type d'éléments dans une sorte de caméra. Je distingue des toits, des gratte-ciel et des arbres.
D'après ce que j'ai compris, les soi-disant vacances ont commencé.
Si tu sais comme j'ai envie de te voir, d'être ensemble, j'ai la tête en marmelade et j'ai mal aux os. J'ai bu du whisky, mais je n'arrive pas à dormir. J'ai reçu 2 lettres de mon mari où il me dit qu'il essaye de m'avoir un visa pour Amman. Maintenant qu'il a des ennuis là-bas, plus lui, moi c'est génial. Si j'avais le choix, ce serait plutôt Paris.
Puis le quartier s'est dégradé et Anna est morte. صورة أشباح أما الشبح صورة.
C'est très joli ça. Dans presque toute l'Europe, le froid continue de sévir. Seuls les cormorans semblent s'accommoder de la température polaire qui règne sur le continent. Juchés sur cet arbre aux branches dénudées, il donne l'impression de loin d'être autant de feuilles qui auraient résisté à la neige.
I see no MEA flight, the third to Larnaca.
Sur cette ceinture à munitions, il y a des taches. Je ne sais pas si c'est de la rouille ou du sang. وردة تعود إلى أحضان عبد الوهاب. فريد الأطرش يعلن خطبته من إذاعة الشرق الأوسط.
Je ne me souvenais plus du tout de ce portefeuille qui était plein de naphtaline.
Puis il y a tous ces objets extrêmement délicats, comme ces jolies dentelles. On peut tâcher.
Et d'un autre côté, une publicité pour les montres Patek Philippe en exclusivité chez Sarkis Pechakjian. Étrange liste. Toutes les listes sont étranges dans cet agenda qui est souvent vide.
نيويورك 14 شباط 1967. بخبرك شو صار فيي ب 24 جنواري. أنا كنت أشتغل عند وحدة ست عمرها 85 سنة كانت تشرب كتير. بنهار 24 الساعة 8 لقيتها ميتة بالحمام. أنا ما قدرت أتحرك، صرت صرخ ودهرت على الطريق. أجا البوليس أخدوني على الأوسبيتال. بقيت جمعة ما أقدر نام، أبكي ليل ونهار.
Ce que ces passeports nous apprennent, c'est que la femme, l'épouse, n'a pas un passeport individuel, qu'elle ne voyage qu'avec son mari, alors que son fils, lui, peut voyager tout seul. Ce que ces passeports nous apprennent aussi, c'est que les ressortissants libanais n'avaient pas besoin de visa pour se rendre en France.
Maman et moi avons vu une très bonne pièce de théâtre sur le 33, un peu plus loin, minuit. Pas d'électricité depuis ce matin. Je viens de me mettre au lit, je suis une loque. Maman et moi, on était dans l'entrée, j'espère qu'ils se sont calmés. Je crois que tout le monde est fou dans ce pays, inclus moi. J'emmerde toute cette situation sans queue ni tête. Un peu plus loin, dimanche matin. Je suis d'une humeur massacrante, réveil pénible. Ma mère commence à faire des commentaires sur l'eau et l'électricité, que je n'aurais pas dû faire le ménage hier et qu'il faut tout jeter comme bouffe dans le frigidaire. J'ai envie d'hurler. Il y a des coups depuis le matin, que le diable les emporte tous, les hommes sont tous cons, ils aiment faire pan-pan, il n'y a que mon fils qui cueille des fleurs, c'est une exception.
Une image qui a été réalisée par d'Iran et on y voit la menace nucléaire sur le monde. C'est écrit bombe atomique.
تاريخ ومحل الولادة 1946 فرنسا. باسبور رقم 146110. خروج 30 حزيران 1975.
تفجير لسكك الحديد وتخريب المطارات ونقاط الاتصال اللاسلكية. تابع موضوع المتفجرات، الألغام الروسية والأمريكية والإنجليزية والفرنسية والإيطالية. كيفية زرعها، أقسامها الرئيسية، مبدأ عملها، أنواعها.
Et en arabe, ça donne الأولاد الأذكياء يسرعون إلى طبيب الأسنان حينما يشعرون بألم في أسنانهم ليستريحوا منه. Non seulement un physique, mais aussi un tempérament de tragédienne, l'un se reflétant dans l'autre. C'est Mounir Aboudebes qui a découvert en moi cette ligne tragique, qui l'a fait travailler et qu'il a su utiliser. Un hommage à René Dick. Les dommages du napalm sur le corps des femmes, la destruction de la station de train à Hanoï.
We heard une terrible explosion qui a achevé le reste des vitres de l'hôtel. J'étais pétrifié. Mr. was, of course, very worried. It would have been on his way home at the time of the explosion.
Il y a des hommes et des femmes qui l'ont vraiment beaucoup aimé et qui continuent à l'aimer. Une sorte d'album hommage dont il ne reste pas grand-chose. To the smartest and brightest natural blonde on the upper floor, happy birthday. Un citoyen afghan accusé de vol a été lynché hier par la foule en colère dans la ville de Karchak. Un second devait subir le même sort quelques instants plus tard.
جريدة السفير 19 حزيران 1986 اتهمت الحركة المستقلة لإطلاق سراح المخطوفين بخطف 9 من المواطنين الأرمن أثناء عمليات قامت بها يومي 27 و 28 أيار الماضي في بيروت الغربية. ب 19 أيار 86 بين خطف.
طريق كفر ياسين وادي الصفا.
I shall miss the Orient on my life. People say I live in the past.
Lights, please. Okay. Last participation, it's not a presentation, will be by Dr. George Arbid, who is a seasoned expert. He has earned his PhD from Harvard University and was a Fulbright visiting scholar at MIT History Theory and Criticism program. He held teaching positions at Alba AUB and the Lebanese University. Dr. Arbid's research covers mostly modern architecture in Lebanon and the Arab world. And he is a co-founder and a director of the Arab Center for Architecture, ACA, which is a member of MOHO, and of Tokomo, Lebanon. He has curated in 2030 a journey into the architecture archives, Beirut, Cairo, Rabat, an exhibition commissioned by the Sharjah Architecture Tribunal. Apart from many other occupations that Dr. Arbid holds as a mayor in Masr Shuf and as a winner of several awards. So I'm pleased now to have Dr. Arbid on board to introduce his film about Akka, which is a short documentary film for almost around 15 minutes.
لازم أعمل شيء؟ Okay. So thank you for the invitation. What you will see now is a 17-minute film. It was part of the exhibition that I curated in Sharjah last year. It shows the activities of the Arab Center for Architecture that I had, and I can answer any questions you have afterwards. Thank you.
Before seeing the film, please note that there will be a Q&A after the end of this movie.
The association is called مركز عربي للعمارة, the Arab Center for Architecture, founded in 2008 in Beirut. The idea is to initiate research, develop the cultural value of architecture, to make it a platform to discuss the issues of the built environment. It is not about the buildings only, it's about the people. It's bettering the lives of people. And understanding issues of history, issues of modernity are very important to construe a contemporary image of ourselves. But also it is important to learn from precedents and lessons and not fetishize architecture styles. دول تقريبا محكينا تقريبا لواحد وليسالات لواحد البيس كهرباء إجارة سويدية هذا كان على ساحة النجم كل وسيلة تروح والأرشيف. زيز اللي عملوه أجاكس من أول أيام الألمنيوم أوائل راحت هبطت عادت موجودة. هدول هدول الصالة هذه المبنى السكني
هذا كمان مبنى لأنه 121
المبنى هون. اوكي السينما هون لأنه فوق السينما كان ممنوع يعمروا كانوا يعمروا على الشارع والسينما ببيعها ورا البناية. هيدا طلب الإقصاء هون مبينة خريطة الأرض. هيدي اللي السبينز الأولاني وهيدي البناية اللي ورا. هلا ما نشوف هون عاملين حساب إنه بدهم يعملوا البناية بعدين. والدليل هون هذه شكل الأرض. أنتم ما بتتذكروا جيلكم بس هون كان في محطة بنزين مبرومة. وهيدا السوبر ماركت هيدا كان فيه من أول اسكاليترز. هيدا الاسكاليتر.
أعتبر منصفات وكمان.
تمام هم خليهم سوا لأنه وصلوا سوا يعني هيدي الرسمة مع المكتوب.
هيدا بتنفذ الاسكليتر.
هيدا اللي تنفذ. بيت المختلف اللبناني بال 64 بيير نعمة جاك عرق تنجي جون نويل كونون جوزيف نصار كان اسمه سيتا جروب. لسوء الحظ هيدا تشوه غيرت مع علمه بس هاي الخريطة بتفرجينا على المضبوط شو كان المقصود. هيدول قناطر بس مش قناطر كاملة بحاولوا يوحوا بالطابع اللبناني بس عملوا مبنى حديث وواجهاته كلها ازاز ومفتوح على البحر. هلا اذا مرقتوا قدامه يمكن ما تعرفوا.
C'est mon collègue, je ne vais pas nous faire très célèbre, beaucoup d'élèves de mes collègues doivent se souvenir maintenant. Je leur disais, connaissez-vous une seule université au monde qui vous donne des PhD, des diplômes en poésie? Qu'est-ce que c'est l'architecture? C'est pas écrire un immense poème en 3 dimensions, en 4 dimensions. C'est une vraie poésie. C'est vraiment de l'art.
المشاريع المهمة طبعا حتى واحد ما يتأثر بالتاني، إن كل مين يعمل سكتشز لوحد وبعدين نجتمع سوا ونشوف كيف نوحد بين النقط المهمة، ميكانيكال انجينير ورينفورس كونكريت انجينير، ونشوف على سكتش شو هو الانبوت تبعه.
لما انت بلشت كنت تقولوا هدول اللي قبلكم مين اللي
أشهر ممكن أكون تاني الفن الثلاث
شو في مشاريع كمان كانت تتميز
بالكمان تبع سايدا
لما جينا نحن من هون عم نحكي سنة الخمسينات، دور المهندس المعماري كان موارد، ما حدا بيعرف شو دور. كان في انجينير باتيسور. فهون الصقل الهندسه المعماريه اجت من هالاشخاص حقيقه اللي هن راسا خريجين بعد الحرب او اوائل الحرب، فكلهم من نفس العجينه.
هذا اي بروجي بعد نجار بيلدينج راس بيروت. اوكي عقار 633 فينا نشوف بخريطه بيروت 633 راس بيروت وين وين؟ لا نشوف ايش بيقولوا هون. حمام طابق السابع، مرخص تحت كذا وبناء على غرف غسيل وغرفه مكنات مصعد وغير ذلك التزام في الطابق الثامن. يعني هدول عم يشتغلوا رينوفيشن على البنايه، يمكن مش هن مضيوها شاير اديب، اجى حدا عامل تعديلات عليها.
مش الأسد وراه في
شوفي في سبيس بين الأسد وهذا، في سبيس بالسكشن، في زحام.
الزحام
شيء بين اثنين، بين هيدا وهيدا في شيء ببين، منه مبين. عم بتطلع للآخر أنا إذا في شيء، ما في شيء. يمكن هو
يمكن هول لأنه هيك هذا ستيرز بعدك عم تطلع.
بعدنا عم نطلع.
بعدنا كم ستيرز بعدين في لاندينج and then you go.
بعدين جوا. اوكي. لكن على بس فرانك. In the Sukan model, there is this building in Beirut, the Maqdisi building, mid-50s. You can see the pilotis on the ground floor, the sunscreens, the opening to the sky, the caps. It's quite representative of that elegant architecture of the mid-50s. It's a book about the Arab world, modernism in the Arab world, designing modernity. And we took 10 case studies. It's in English and in Arabic. This book is by Rahif Fayyad. It is an account of the reconstruction and the matter of public sphere and architecture في العمارة والشأن العام, public space and so on.
Donc ça, c'est un magazine d'architecture qui a été publié.
C'est le magazine de l'ordre des ingénieurs et architectes.
Et il existe toujours.
Oui, mais sous une autre forme. Il a pris un autre format. C'était pratiquement la seule publication d'architecture. Ces documents-là sont devenus en fait des archives. Bon, on va peut-être arriver, on est en 67. Vous me dites, il est sur la couverture.
Il est là.
68, le voici.
Ouais.
Lisez.
Une musique douce mènera le piéton à travers toutes les ruelles. Une grande pâtisserie permettra la détente avant ou après la projection d'un film dans une salle de cinéma placée à partir du premier étage. Cette salle de cinéma en forme de coquille, reposant si légèrement sur des rotules, malgré l'ampleur de son volume, permettra de vivre à chaque début de projection et pendant quelques secondes un voyage dans l'espace de par une synchronisation d'un son et d'un jeu de lumière étudié.
Le plan, ici on voit le souk en bas. La salle, c'est une photo, c'est un plan coupé pris au niveau de l'escalier. Donc on voit l'escalier qui est au milieu de la salle. On voit la double coque ici. Le centre commercial au rez-de-chaussée. Les immeubles prévus. Donc celui-ci était construit puis démoli. Celui-là n'a jamais été construit. Ici, dans cette façade, on voit que, d'ailleurs, c'est écrit ici, c'est que ça, c'est réellement MOHO, donc inexistant. Hein? Donc ça, c'est un dessin fait par la suite qui explique qu'ils n'ont plus construit cette partie-là. On ne le voit pas dans cette photo, mais on le connaît derrière le centre Azali de Lecomte. Le centre de Azali de Lecomte, qui est d'ailleurs, c'est le même architecte qui a construit Azali, qui est cette école et ce couvent qui sont là en fait, c'est le même architecte. Et mon architecte qui a beaucoup construit avec l'hôpital Rezé, il a construit les deux Azali, il a construit l'ancien aéroport avec Vicario. Et ces archives ont été trouvées dans une benne à ordures à Paris, imaginez-vous, les archives de Lecomte.
Qu'est-ce que c'est que cette histoire?
Oui.
Non, mais il faut raconter.
Mais je vous assure, les archives de Lecomte ont été trouvées dans une benne à ordures. Quelqu'un vidait un bureau depuis quelques années. Quelqu'un vidait un bureau et puis par la suite, quelqu'un appelle la IFA, l'Institut français d'architecture, pour leur dire que les gens ramassaient dans une benne à ordures des photos d'architecture et des plans. Ils ont accouru, ils ont trouvé que c'était les archives Lecomte. Bon, des photos avaient disparu, mais la plupart des plans étaient toujours là. Et j'ai une correspondance avec le directeur de l'IFA dans laquelle il m'explique, parce que je lui ai demandé s'ils avaient les plans de cette école et d'autres archives de Lecomte. Il m'explique qu'elles avaient été trouvées dans une benne. Et nous espérons avoir une copie bientôt. Et cette école est assez extraordinaire parce que c'est une œuvre urbaine dans le quartier ici. Nous sommes très heureux d'être en face. Il y a des cours intérieurs à l'intérieur, il y a un espace très moderne à l'intérieur, et de l'extérieur, il y a cette sorte d'austérité du travail de la pierre, très bon travail de la pierre d'ailleurs. Et là, en face, vous avez vous voyez les enfants à travers la vitre. Donc, c'est une sorte d'espace où on fait du sport. Et au milieu, vous avez le château d'eau, qui est là depuis les années 30, donc bien avant l'école construite début des années 50.
بنجيب اللون تبع هيدا بروبرتي ونحط الموضوع. ليه موجودين على ارض البور يكونوا موجودين على هيدي كمان. ساعتها موجود فيها فكره الاحمر كمان شلون يعني نحن نكفي لون دوت هيك وتفتح بدل ما نحدد وين بتسكر. يعني بتبلش من هون بتفتح هيك لبرا.
ايوه منيح. منيح تمام. قبل كل شيء بدي اقول لك انه الخرايط اللي جمعناهم من عندكم تبع جورج ريس في بيناتهم خرايط بنايات عريضه. هدول طلبوهم مديريه الاثار اعطيناهم نفقه كرمال يحافظوا على البنايه، لانه بتعرفي مهدده بالهدم واكيد لازم يتحافظ عليها.
Oh, please. I would like to invite the panelists for the Q&A, and we'd like to open the floor for questions. So, okay.
مرحبا. بدنا نخبركم انه الساعة 4 حيكون في هون مظاهرة قدام الاسكوا، فبدنا نعجل شوي نخلص هالتو برزنتيشن الباقيين مشان حتى تظهروا بكير شوي حتى ما تعلقوا بعجقة سير. يعطيكم العافية. Thank you.
Right. To start the questions, I have a question to the panel members. As being members of MOHO, how do you evaluate your previous experience as members of the MOHO network, and how do you look for the future of this experience? What are your expectations as members of a network, and the virtues of a network in terms of the efforts for cultural heritage, digitalization, and preservation?
Okay, the experience with MOHO was great, but it depended a lot on the grant we got when we started. So we did a lot of work, several conferences, regional, international. Each of us was able to equip itself with needed material, scanners, shelves, acid-free paper. We organized workshops, technical workshops together, and many things. I think it's very good to pool together because what is common to us is modernism. So we all deal with modern artifacts and modern manifestations of art and culture. And this is usually not funded enough. Obviously, when you speak of heritage, people think of older heritage in all aspects, namely architecture and other things. So I think that the best we could do now is to apply again together to a good grant that would allow us to continue. Things have changed when we came together, that was maybe 10 years ago. Now things have changed, our needs have changed. The world is changing very quickly. So we need to put some application together and continue.
Completely agree. It's definitely sometimes linked to funding and sort of limited resources. So it only makes sense that we pool these resources and sort of maximize on how many people benefit. And it's good to figure out ways that we sustain it beyond grants. So a lot of these things have been also personal initiatives, people or institutions giving from what they have in order to sustain it, because it's something that is a valuable network. And from what you could see, everybody has very diverse practices, but also there are a lot of commonalities, and it makes sense that we support each other in that way.
I also agree with George and Rana, but also the networking is a very good point, because acting alone as a single institution might not bring the result of a network, a lobbying. That's, I like to call it lobbying. And then it could be also more developed, where all the artistic archives, like related to the paintings, could all gather together, the photography and architecture. It could make a very big honeycomb, and inshallah in the future we'll be able to do it. And I invite people to be in MOHO for sure.
Any questions? Yes, please.
My question is for Ms. Bouharib. You mentioned that you are going to digitize the La Revue du Liban, the whole collection. I'm curious to know how did you manage to respect the copyright? Did you have signed MOU with them, or because this is something that I really would like to know about?
Well, first,
Thank
Anna,
you.
I didn't go into the copyright thing because I also had comments on the previously said about the copyrights, because there's layers and layers and layers for the copyrights, especially for what is published already. It is public domain when it's published. So you could have had the Revue du Liban at home, and you could have digitize it, but keep it to preserve it. Now, for the access, of course, since the family of one of the editors-in-chief back then gave us these binders because they were given to all the editors-in-chief in the history, they gave it to us, and in the contract she gave permission for people to use them for research, not for commercial use. So there's always research, education, and commercial use. Anything that needs to be reprinted, we will have to ask. Even sometimes, I mean, if the magazine, if they took the issue of 2000, it's not 50 years, neither for the author, nor for the photographer, etc., nor for the magazine. So all this is to be sought as well, of course.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sorry, just to elaborate on the same question. So when we say only for research purpose, it will not be online. It will be only readable on site.
Yes, definitely. So after we digitize, usually we have a computer indoors in the library where people could check these. And we don't, the library and the museum is always free of charge. When it comes to paying something, it's another strategy. Sometimes it doesn't get into our usual working day to pay something. No, it's money is outside our premises in Sirso, mainly. Voilà.
Dr. Istvan. Questions? Yes, Fatma. Mike.
Yes, I have a question to the institutions that provide the services for visitors. How popular are you? Like, are you getting a lot of questions? Can you use this for funding, to ask for funding?
Maybe I could respond to this, because you saw I showed the statistics of numbers here, of numbers of researchers and visitors, and this is what we put in the fundraising strategy to get people, more people to give for the museum. Of course, the more we have money, the more we can digitize, the more we can attract researchers.
In our case, we get a lot of students and professors, researchers. Everything is for free. They can visit our library. We give them, even when we do have the right digital copies of something, but again, only for research. When there is a publication, there is a fee to pay, a fee of research and processing and scanning if the scan is not done, and so on. And the fee is not very high. It's around $30 to $40, $50 per image, which is nothing for a book that is being published. But we don't have a lot of those coming. So we do have serious survival issues, because we rent. Usually grants don't give you money for renting. But now we're revisiting our policy. We think we should have a board of trustees of people who are convinced of our cause and who are ready to commit to finding the money, because we are often contacted now even by people who want to give us archives, but we say we don't have space for it, we cannot handle it, we cannot process it. It takes a lot of time.
This is the first time that we're this public facing, so we're really just experiencing it now. But otherwise, there is access to the to images, and whatever digitized images that we have, it was access through the website. And unlike in some cases, these images also could be licensed for use beyond research, depending on what the depositor or the donor has requested. And the reality is that some of these belong to photographers, and part of their own sustainable practice is to have these images licensed and getting copyright fees on them. So this serves the foundation in a smaller amount, but it definitely serves the copyright owner on a larger scale.
For audio files, and as per Amar's access policy, we try to encourage and support scholarly research. So if there is like a scholar or a student pursuing a master's or a PhD degree, and if the number of audio files requested is confined with a certain limit, we usually have like very symbolic charges. If it exceeds this number, then it will be a case-by-case study. If it's a commercial entity, we usually have a different charge for that. And all of this is used, as our colleagues mentioned, for the sustainability of the archive, really. Any further questions? Okay, to save time and to leave early, I close this session. Thank you a lot, and looking forward to future events.